Hey everybody, welcome to The Early Edge, a mentorship podcast for next generation leaders where we share insights we wish we had learned earlier in our careers.
We want to equip you to learn more, grow faster, and thrive in both your work and personal life. I'm Jay.
And I'm Jeff. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to The Early Edge Mentorship Podcast. We're very excited to have a guest that we've had on recently back. Tom Grueller, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be back. And I think, am I the first repeat guest ever on the podcast?
You might be.
You might be. We'll have to check our records.
Okay. Yeah. If it is true, I'm honored.
Very good. Well, we're glad to have you back. And I'm excited because we're actually, if you go back to our very first episode where we introduced this podcast and its purpose, who this podcast is really targeted to, and that we want to share nuggets of wisdom with that we've learned over our career, it is those folks younger in their careers, 20s and 30s. Now, with that said, so the reason I point that out is we're going to go right at the heart of mentorship today and what that is. So we'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. And I would say if you are listening right now to this episode and you are 30 or 35 or over, we hope that you take what we talk about today and use it as a tool to connect people, and that'll make more sense as we talk about this episode. If you are in your 20s and 30s, younger in your career, we think this episode is really going to help you as you start to navigate finding people to surround yourself with and navigate the early stages of your career. So very excited, Tom, to kick this one off. Jay, any other setup?
I would just say that there are different relationships as you navigate your career that can become advocates, support people, raving fans. And you hear terms like coaching, mentoring, sponsorship, leadership. And so we're going to unpack what are the ways those show up, what are the types of relationships and situations where you should be looking for one versus the other. And then again, for our older listeners, how can you become that for someone or help someone find the right dynamic and relationship? And we always like to start with a story. So, Tom, you introduced this idea. And so as you were thinking about mentorship versus sponsorship, what was coming to mind that made you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of key things. We in my last podcast, we were talking about early stages of my career and leading to, newer jobs, bigger jobs, and imposter syndrome. So if you're interested in that topic, you can go back and listen to that podcast. But it made me really reflect on some of the people that poured into me early in my career, and frankly that I had to seek out or did seek out to give me wisdom, to knowledge, experience, and to sound things out. And I think that dynamic, by the way, has completely changed in the remote work environment that we're in today. And in that world, how do these things play out? And I've got a couple of things on my mind there. But first, I should say that the mentors in my life have been the most important thing professionally that I can look back on and say more important than any job title I had or any degree that I got was the people who took the time to mentor me. And I think that's it's a really important part of who I want to be as a leader, especially in my life stage and career stage that I am now. And it's an important topic. I can think of a couple of them. One you know well was your father, who very, very early in my professional life gave me a job that set about my ambition in my own career. And he took the time to really pour into me, tell me directly when I was screwing up, also give me pearls of wisdom. And there are others along the way. David Bell, who was the chairman of Interpublic Group, who took me out of a city and out of a job and put me fully into another city and another job because he saw what I could do. And then he followed it up by actually taking me to meetings with him, grooming me, putting me in a leadership training program, and making sure that whatever talent he thought I had or he saw in me was fully realized through the experience of watching smart people, experienced people do the thing. And I just think that's a huge, huge part of what we're in.
Well, and both of those examples sound like mentorship and sound like also sponsorship. So what are the characteristics of those relationships that fall into the mentorship category, and what are the ones that fall into the sponsorship category?
It's a great question. For me, sponsorship is usually or hopefully transparent in its nature, meaning I'm ready for a career stage, or I think I'm ready for a career stage, and I'm reaching out to you to help me connect, to help me make the right appearances, or to put me in positions where I think you can benefit me by putting me forward. Sometimes it's a training program, or it's a leadership development program that you can put me in, or sometimes it's just I'm coming to you because I want to get introduced to Jeff, and Jeff, you know Jeff, and so maybe you can just make the introduction. That's very different than mentorship. For me, mentorship is where I can come and bring the very real part of my struggle. And maybe you can even show me where I'm struggling and pour into me in a safe space where we can be curious and vulnerable together about what that is. And we can together explore how to get better, how I can get better, and where I can improve.
It sounds like a much deeper relationship, at least on the surface.
I think so. I think if it's good, it should be a relationship that you pour into. Even if it's a one-time session, it should be one where you can say, I'm putting down the airs, or I'm putting down the imposter, and I'm really going to try to be real and unpack it.
I'm thinking back. I've certainly had sponsors over the years, many. I don't know if I've ever had a true mentor in the nature of a mentor that you've described. And I think maybe it's something that we were talking about earlier, is you have to seek it out. You have to understand there's a need and opportunity and go seek it out. Many companies don't have formal mentorship programs. I will mention, I spent a number of years at Fidelity Investments, and for many of the younger individuals coming into Fidelity, they were put in a formal mentorship program, and it had great benefits. But I think for any individual thinking about how they develop and build their career, they've got to seek it out and ask for it.
Yeah, and I want to point out that there are people like you mentioned, Tom, my father, JW, as we call him, and David Bell, who were proactively looking for or open to investing in that relationship. You didn't need to seek them out, it sounds like. They, through your interactions, saw something in you and took the initiative. Is that true?
Yep.
So those people are out there. More often, I find, and to your point, Jeff, if you want to grow in a way and you identify somebody who has done it, or you think they've done it, it is upon you to go and seek them out. And I was just having a coffee with a guy who mentors a ton of people, and I talked to him this week, and he gave a great bit of advice to the people that come to him, is like, be very specific about what you see in me that you want me to teach you. Instead of, hey, will you mentor me? It was the way you parent, the way you manage marketing. I want to learn that. So be very specific so the person you're seeking can understand the brackets or the boundaries of what you're there to talk about. And so mentorship, and the reason we're doing this podcast is because, and to your point, the way you described it, Tom, is we're trying to impart things to people who haven't been there. We have been there. And so we are trying to share our experiences and wisdom in a deep, transparent, interpersonal relationship where sponsorship could be, I say advocate. This is someone who's helping you achieve something by making the way, making connections, sharing their network, telling you need to go get coaching or whatever it is. So I just love the distinction, and it does matter. Tom, you had mentioned there were times when you maybe thought you were seeking mentorship, but it was sponsorship or vice versa. What happens when what you're seeking and what you get are not aligned?
Well, I can think of a recent example where someone came to me actually, and they said, "I want you to be my mentor," and I was like, "Great!" And I love what you just said about the need to be specific. And I wish I had known that prior to this conversation. But of course, because I believe, like you do, that mentorship is this relationship where you're really pouring into that in a human way and bringing advice. But in this particular case, I was bringing what you can imagine was pearls of wisdom.
It was amazing. Unbelievable. Yeah. Amazing.
And I was like, this is not landing. And I'm looking at this relationship. And frankly, it was over a couple of different sessions. And finally I said, well, hey, this doesn't seem to be really landing. Like, are you getting from this what you wanted? And the person was actually like, well, I really just wanted to have an introduction to so-and-so. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, it was awkward for me and uncomfortable, but it does take the point that you made, which is like, be explicit. Hey, I would be fine, totally fine, if it was like, I want to prove to you that I'm worth the introduction, but really what I'm looking for is an introduction, or to be sponsored into a Fidelity leadership training program, or to be introduced as the next candidate on the team, or whatever it might be.
Yep.
Be explicit about that. On the other side of it, what really resonated is the mentorship piece of it. Specifically, what do you want to learn? When someone comes to me and they want mentorship, and they've prepared the areas where they want, the things maybe that they've seen me do that they want to, or have read or heard of that I've done, that they want to learn more about, it creates an unbelievable frame. I like that frame or parentheses around the discussion we can now go deep in. And to me, that is tremendously important, is be prepared. Ask the specific thing that you're struggling with or that you want to know about, and then also be ready to be vulnerable. Be ready to say, I don't know, and
they can't help you.
Yeah.
They can't help you if you're not transparent about what is really going on and what you're worried about, what you're scared about. And I'll tell you, we've all been scared and we all haven't known. And so no matter who you're going to for mentorship, they have felt the way you feel. And just start with that assumption, because it'll just get real and more effective faster. You do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tom, you've been a part of larger organizations. You've started your own organization. You were the chief marketing officer at Microsoft, so you've been in very large organizations. Do you feel like if someone is looking for a mentor, do you think there are more benefits to finding somebody within the organization they work, or do you think there's more benefits to having a mentor outside the organization they work for, or does it really just matter on who the person is?
I think it's very situational. My blink reaction to that was separate, right? So that your sponsor may be your boss who you're looking to get a promotion from, or have them advocate for you to get a promotion or a leadership designation or whatever it might be. And that a mentor would be someone safely outside where you could really pour into that person, give them the ugly challenges you're facing, your fears, and really take their wisdom and advice. And it's oftentimes safer to do that for some people psychologically than to do it within their direct boss who evaluates them every quarter. But, frankly, one of the most powerful ways that it lived in my life was where it was overlapping, meaning my boss, and David Bell's a good example, was actually, he was my boss's boss, but either way, he was bringing me, in the context of my job, he was bringing me along, inviting me into meetings, putting me in work environments where I could watch him, he could watch me, I could watch others that were more senior than me, and he was literally specifically doing it so that I could get the experience of being in the room and see it. And that's happened to me many, many times. It's a different dynamic now because of the workplace.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second, because the hybrid remote work environment affects this significantly. This is sort of back to David Bell. It sounds like he was just wired to always think mentorship, and he then did some sponsorship also.
Right.
But was, even through the sponsorship activities, was using those to mentor you, which is great. Again, not everyone is going to naturally seek you out to be your mentor. You have to take ownership of this. There's a biblical reference in relationship that always strikes me when we talk about this. And it's this notion of Jesus, Paul, and Timothy. And the idea is that everybody should have certain relationships in their lives. Paul and Timothy was a mentor-mentee relationship. And no matter what age you are, you should always have a mentor. And no matter what age you are, you should always be a mentor. And I don't care if you're 21 years old. There are people you can mentor. And the reason behind this is I have learned some of the best lessons by helping someone navigate something else, and I will say something to them, and then I will think, wow, I should do that. That sounds like, where did that come from? That sounds like really smart. Maybe I'll start doing the thing I just told them they should be doing. So we all need those relationships. And the third relationship, I said Jesus, which of course everybody ought to have, because that's, makes life better forever. But Barnabas is the third one, which is the encouragement, the peer who's in your corner, the one you can go to and share vulnerably what's happening. So we all need to be mentoring. We all need to have a mentor, and we all ought to have some people in our corner who are pulling for us.
Yeah.
And we need to make it happen sometimes if it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. You had mentioned in the beginning about, sort of the roles, the different mentor-like roles. And boy, when you call it all mentorship, it can get confusing. But when you start to pull out, like, who is my coach?
Yep.
Who is my mentor? Who is my, my boss?
Sponsor.
Yep. And who's my sponsor? Yeah. And then, what I need. A coach is there for, you were talking about this earlier. A coach is there for specific skill development.
Yep.
And maybe your sponsor has said, you need to get this skill before you can get that job. And you go, okay, good. I need a coach, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you coach people in the marketing space all the time. How do you manage the distinction between, hey, this is a mentorship situation or a coaching situation?
Honestly, the truth is, I do a lot of coaching it's let's say clouded or shrouded in professional conversation and development.
Okay, kind of client type stuff.
Yeah.
Around your space. So
more tactical, more knowledge oriented versus relational, that kind of stuff.
Well, that's a good parsing out. I think it's probably both, if I'm honest. But if I'm struggling, or if a client of mine comes to me and they're struggling with a specific tactical thing, then yes, of course, I'm going to share best practice that I have learned. And that's a big part of my job, is working with multiple professional organizations and bringing best practice into them and teaching, in a sense, in that. And that's coaching. But also, if there is someone I care about and I can bring some advice or some wisdom, and they're willing to give me that ugly stuff that they're struggling with, then I can bring that to them. So
then I guess it's what's the goal defines the approach. So if the goal is you have done something and I aspire to do it, can I just pick your brain? That's mentorship. They're leaning on your experience. If it's, hey, I'm having trouble navigating this work relationships, give me some best practices, then you go into coach mode. And coach mode, the distinction is great coaches don't tell you the answer. They ask great questions so you arrive at the answer, because what you're learning to do is think, not just asking the answer machine what you should do. And so it's situational.
It seems to me, too, a mentorship might have a time ending due to the situational nature of who the mentee and the mentor is, but a mentor relationship doesn't really have to have a defined ending.
Yeah.
From a goal standpoint, right? Because it can span for forever.
I was talking before we started recording. I mentioned somebody, Chip Montgomery, who has been probably the central figure of mentorship in my life for 25 years. And Tom knows him. And I just talked to him this week. That man has never stopped investing in me, no matter what my job was, what stage of life. And when I have a hey, I'm a middle-aged man with a business question or a family question or a parenting question, he's top 3 on my list every time to reach out and say, hey, Chip, what do you think about this? And man, what a goal I have to try to be that for somebody.
Yeah, the old adage, I can't remember it, but the power of having somebody who knows all your stories, right, in your life, where you can take that challenge of today to them, and they know all the contextual history of how you've overcome other challenges or who you are. That is pure gold for your own personal growth.
Yep. Awesome. Any key takeaways we want to share with our folks? I'll start, and this is back to the aspirational one. If you're in a position and you've had some experience, look for opportunities to share your hard-earned wisdom with other people. Be one of those people like David Bell, who's just naturally wired to try to build into people.
And probably part B of that, not necessarily a different takeaway, but don't feel like you have to have a defined agenda for mentorship.
Yeah,
if you're just willing to listen and pour into somebody, you've got some experiences, let the relationship build and the results will come. I guess it ties right back to imposter syndrome, one of our more recent episodes.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you have to have it all answered.
Yeah, that's great.
As a mentor.
Yeah, and I would say when you're choosing your mentor, find that place where you can feel some safety. Because the magic in mentorship happens when you don't sanitize the stuff.
Yeah.
You can bring the ugly stuff. You can really lay it out there and say, I don't know. I am at my wit's end.
Yeah.
And if you're not safe enough to do that, then it's probably a sponsor conversation you're having, frankly. But a real vulnerable place where you can both bring curiosity and ideas, advice, that's mentorship to me.
Perhaps we leave with a challenge to all our listeners that if you don't have a mentor in your life right now, write a few thoughts down on what type of mentor you would like, who could potentially be a mentor, and reach out and ask.
Yeah, and I would say the way to think that through is either who do I admire, who have I seen that does something that inspires me or has achieved something that I think I want to achieve. So I could look at it from that perspective, or I could look internally and say, what's something I'm struggling with? And then I can maybe go find that person. And then when you approach them, be specific about what you see that you would like to talk about.
Yeah, boy, that makes me think of adversity and finding that person who might have gone through that adversity. And boy, that's a whole nother episode on the value and learnings of going through adversity.
Yeah, no question. All right.
Very good.
Sounds
I think
like
that's the early edge for the week.
Yep. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to The Early Edge, a mentorship podcast for next generation leaders. If you have feedback or would like to submit questions or a topic idea, email us at earlyedge@reddogadvisors.com
or earlyedge@altaimpact.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review. See you next time.